All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of On the Ropes. It is Monday afternoon, February 22nd. Thank you all for coming back, man. If you all are tuning into these episodes, I really enjoy doing them. I think this is like the third or fourth episode we're doing and the second episode only with the new equipment and all that stuff. So appreciate y'all for coming back, man. Yeah, we had a good weekend of fights. I like to get right into it, so for a really good weekend of fights, from boxing to UFC. I knew it was going to be an interesting weekend, a lot to look forward to. I'm a personal fan of, obviously, the UFC. Derrick Lewis and Curtis Blaydes were headlining the UFC Fight Night. And as a boxing fan as well, I had two fights to look forward to. I had my boy Adrien Broner in his return, and Valdez and Berchelt going at it, I can't wait to get into that fight, man. That was such a good fight, a straight up war. Can't wait to share my thoughts on that. But yeah, let's get started with the UFC. We had the fight night, Blaydes and Lewis. For a fight night, it was a pretty decent card for a fight night. I wasn't mad at it. Obviously, casuals are going to think otherwise, but I did not hate it at all. I really, I like the card. I like the card. Obviously, not the best card. We all know this, but I liked it. Now, how it turned out, I was watching it off and on. Some of the fights, some of the early fights, especially. As you can see, I have the fights pulled up here. There's like 3 decisions, a submission, and 1 KO and 1 soul taking that we'll get into. But yeah, I mean, the first fight of the card was Andrei Arlovski and Tom Aspinall. Andrei Arlovski, I think he's 42 years old. Didn't look bad, man, to be honest. I mean, he didn't look horrible. He didn't look like, he should call it quits or anything like that. But obviously, and being a heavyweight, you can afford to get away with some sort of, lack of skill or something like that. People always possess knockout power, and the heavyweights, especially the Pitbull. But yeah, it was just a good scrap. Submission round 2. Arlovski just made a split-second error. Tom Aspinall got the takedown, and Arlovski didn't even really defend the neck. He just, was kind of just, shell-shocked for a second and, got his neck taken, and that's all she wrote for that one. He's getting caught with that jab early, though. Obviously, I don't really, obviously don't see a title shot anywhere in the near future for Arlovski. Depends on what he wants to do, man. I mean, I love the guy. Huge fan, been around for ages, and yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, I don't know what he does from here. If he wants to continue fighting, make some paychecks, yeah. I mean, he didn't look bad, like I said, and especially being in heavyweight, he can get away with those lack of speed, or you can make it up with your punching power in the heavyweight. So that was the tip off of the fight night. Then we had Phil Haas and Imamov. Pretty good scrap. Some people had Imamov winning. I'm not mad with the decision. Phil Haas was severely hurt, wobbly legs in the middle round, and I think it was just the takedowns that got him the win. Pretty good scrap. Imamov looked upset, didn't really argue the decision though. But yeah, decision victory for Phil Haas. Then we had my boy Alexei Oleinik. His record looking like a Muay Thai fighter's record. He didn't look himself this fight. Obviously, the age, we all know Alexei Oleinik. Although he did have the last fight I watched his live was I think versus Fabricio Verdum, and he looked like he put on a clinic in that fight. He looked like age was not a factor to him at all in that fight. I remember watching that, very impressed. I thought, we might have something there for Alexei Oleinik. But this fight, he just didn't look himself. Obviously, you have a young guy in the house. Just very aggressive. Alexei Oleinik, one tough person, but obviously when you have a barrage of shots like that and a couple get through, with your age, you're bound to get hurt, and that's what happened with him. Didn't look like he really started to get going in any part of the minute 55, or 4 minutes of the fight. So, um, I'm sorry, 1 minute 55 seconds into the fight, didn't really look like he was going to get going, and got stopped with those punches. Kind of watched off and on the Derek Minor fight, Charles Rosa's decision victory. Then you had the co-main event, women's bantamweight, Yana Kunitskaya and Vieira. A decision victory. Obviously, some people were arguing Vieira should have won. The takedown and her not really doing any damage. It is what it is. I mean, some judges are going to give it like that if you're on top and controlling the fight. So I can see why they gave it to Kunitskaya. Obviously, it wasn't the most exciting fight. Just wanted the main event to come around at that point, to be honest. But then we were not disappointed. We got 2 rounds of Curtis Blaydes and Derrick Lewis. Coming into the fight, a lot of analysts were predicting Curtis Blaydes to get an easy victory. Obviously, him being able to grapple. Derrick Lewis, obviously not known too much for his grappling, or all for that fact. And most people would bet on the fact that Curtis Blaydes would just take him down and hold him down for a majority of the 5 rounds. But Derrick Lewis never bet. I never bet against him. Obviously, if you watch my last podcast, you can see I picked Derrick Lewis in that fight, even though I listed why Curtis Blaydes is probably favored in this matchup. And yeah, I mean, Derrick Lewis just was calm, stalking his opponent even while he was retreating backwards. And he, I think Curtis Blaydes, I think he shot, was that like the first shot he had, like the takedown? I'm not sure. I think it was either the first or second attempt of taking him down. Some in the clinch he might have been trying to go for a takedown, but first shot. And like Derrick Lewis said, and I predicted, that's when I was watching the fight, I thought he was looking for that shot. As Curtis Blaydes was going to come in, I didn't think it was going to land that severely on Curtis Blaydes, but I mean, my guy was out before he even started falling back. So that was a vicious, vicious knockout by Derrick Lewis. Obviously, couldn't have asked for anything better on the, you know, I think he's on a 4-fight win streak now. We could take a look. Couldn't have asked for anything better than that for Derrick Lewis. Honestly, makes a good appeal for a title shot, or something close to a title shot. Obviously, he's not getting the title shot next. We'll get into that, but yeah. So looking at Derrick Lewis, he's fought, obviously, that he had that little run. Man, he beat Ngannou and Volkov. That led him to the quick turnaround after the Volkov fight to fight DC for the title. Got submitted, then came back again, lost by TKO to JDS. Then he had the knee surgery, so I guess he was injury plagued for that fight. Not 100%. So he had that surgery, and took been a year, and then he came back, fought Ilir Latifi, Alexei Oleinik, and then Curtis Blaydes KO'd him. So he's on a 4-fight win streak. Heavyweight division, obviously, somewhat you can predict what's going to happen next. We know that Ngannou and Stipe are slated to fight next. So I guess we'll just start the matchmaking process here. But yeah, just final thoughts. The KO was vicious. Couldn't have been better for Derrick Lewis for his goals. Obviously, whenever we watch a Derrick Lewis fight, he's always going for the knockout. I read some stat, I forgot. I could check it here in a second, but the amount of knockouts per fights he's had, or something like that. Like the average, like finish, he has a lot of finishes by KO or TKO. So obviously, never count Derrick Lewis out. It was a vicious knockout, vintage Derrick Lewis. Now the punches after the fact, I mean, obviously we've seen a lot of these before. It's like, yeah, it's not your. He said it's not my job. It's Herb Dean's job to get in. Herb Dean's job to get in there. Name Herb. Yeah, I get it. Technically, yeah, it's not his fault. But I mean, you can not hit him. You can just let it be. But I mean, it is what it is. We've seen a lot of that before. Vicious shot. I mean, obviously there was some trash talk in the lead up to the fight. And Derrick Lewis, I think he posted on Instagram today, waiting for Black History Month to be over so I could roast Curtis Blaydes or something like that. Funny ass dude, man. But yeah, you know, good win for Derrick Lewis. Unnecessary shots, don't need those in the heavyweight division, especially. Um, and yeah, so we'll get into some matchmaking predictions here. Um, Here he is saying, "That's not my fault. That's Herb Dean's fault." Uh, Vintage Derrick Lewis. He says, "I'm going to keep fighting until the referee pulls you off. That's with anyone. Same thing could happen to me. I'm going to just keep fighting until the referee says stop." Um, and yeah, he says, like, I'm obviously during a fight, I can't just turn the switch off like that. He says, which is 100% true. You can't, especially when there's all that stress of the fight camp and stuff like that. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's a vicious sport. We all know this. Um, but yeah, it was definitely hard to watch, especially after him being stiff before he even hit the ground. Um, but yeah, before I go into that, let me just pull up Derrick Lewis here. So yeah, we have a 4-fight win streak for Derrick Lewis. Um, Obviously, a highlight reel finish in his last fight. Now the heavyweight division, um, shaping up, like I said, pretty good. Um, we have Ngannou and Stipe slated to fight next. Obviously, Stipe in his later part of his career already has a win over Ngannou, and they're fighting next. Derrick Lewis has already fought some names. We have a heavyweight fight main event coming up next week, Gane and Rosenstruck. So for me, I mean, you just give him that would make sense. I mean, you can just get the winner of those two. You're not getting the title shot next, so it would make sense for him to get the winner of the next week's fight. I think I was looking at this article here. The matchmaking. All right, so yeah, I mean, basically says the same thing I was going to say. Um, you know, yeah. So who could he fight next? Rematch against Volkov. Yeah, Volkov has a victory over Alistair Overeem, but I mean, during that, if you remember that fight, I think that was on the McGregor Khabib card. I'm not sure, or was it Diaz? I'm not sure. I have no grasp on time anymore because it's been like 5 years since the first McGregor fight or some shit like that. So, um, or the first McGregor Diaz fight. It's been 5 years since that. So I have no grasp on time. Like it feels like it was like a year or 2 or 3 years ago. But um, anyway, I think that fight against Volkov and Derrick Lewis was under one of those cards. Derrick Lewis was, I think, losing the fight. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was losing the fight. And literally had a comeback KO. Like Volkov, all he had to do was just stay away from Derrick Lewis for like 10 seconds, and he would have won the fight. But and Derrick Lewis hit that lottery shot and got the TKO over Volkov. So I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to sell. And yeah, that was the infamous "my balls was hot" fight. And like I said, and number two, the winner of next weekend's main event. So I think that's what makes sense to me. If we pull up the rankings here, it kind of just explains itself. I mean, a lot of the puzzle pieces have already been put into place. You have Ngannou, Stipe, Curtis Blaydes, you just beat. Rosenstruck and Gane fighting. Volkov just beat Overeem, so obviously no brainer. Those are the names on the top. You're not fighting anyone below I would say obviously no one below Gane. So yeah, I mean, if I'm Derrick Lewis, I just wait for the next week's main event. Um, and on top of that, I don't believe the UFC is going to, you know, pass up the opportunity. They're not going to give Derrick Lewis the shot next. Their plans are to get, obviously, this fight with Ngannou and Stipe done, and they want their big cash fight to be John Jones stepping into heavyweight. So I don't see Derrick Lewis being entered into that picture. So if you're Derrick Lewis, I mean, you can just wait a little bit, fight the winner of those two, and see what happens with the three guys that I just named, for the title shot. So I think that's gonna be fun. Derrick Lewis is obviously a fun fighter to watch. John Jones coming to heavyweight. I think that's obviously what makes sense. Don't need to be a genius to figure that out. And yeah, I think it's gonna be really exciting. I would love to see those guys fight each other. Obviously, I mean Stipe has a win over Ngannou. Derrick Lewis has a win over Ngannou. Um, Derrick Lewis aside, I mean John Jones coming into heavyweight. Either one of those fights excites me. John Jones, Stipe, you beat a goat, you are the goat type of deal. John Jones versus Ngannou, I mean that's just a blockbuster fight. Who the hell does not want to watch Ngannou and John Jones go at it? Um, so yeah, very very exciting indeed. Happy for Derrick Lewis. And moving on to boxing now, we can get into this. Apart from the timing was obviously really good. I literally watched the UFC fight end, and then I tuned in over to the Berchelt and Chavez fight. I think I caught it in the second round, I believe, or the end of the first. Yeah, end of the first round. I caught it, if I'm not mistaken, because I had it open already, but I like 100% started paying attention to it. Very early on, and yeah, it was a really really good fight, and that doesn't even do it justice. It was a very pretty much an all out war. Obviously, Berchelt being the favorite in this fight. Chavez, very very impressive fighter. You had Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez in the seat in the like 2 out of the 10 people that were watching this live in there. And yeah, I thought it was a really very interesting fight. Um, you know, I think Chavez displayed a better game plan against Berchelt. I think Berchelt um, just couldn't catch the tempo and the rhythm of Chavez to catch him with those strikes. Chavez hurt Berchelt numerous times in the middle part of the rounds. I'm trying to remember. So the fight ended in the later round. Was it the 10th round or 11th round? I think it was 11th. Here, I'll try to find it here. Um, but anyway, I think it was the later rounds. But what I'm trying to say is in the middle rounds, he was very very hurt, wobbled numerous times, standing 8 count. He obviously got a 10-8 round for Chavez, and after that, he was still wobbly in the next round. After that, 10-8 round, and then he came to, and he actually started displaying his own offense in the fight. And then we saw Chavez start to gain momentum back again after that small burst from Berchelt. And then obviously the spectacular KO, devastating KO. I mean, we were all worried there for Berchelt. I mean, you take all that punishment in the middle rounds, you're pretty much dazed, wobbly. Obviously, that Mexican spirit, he's not going to quit. And just to top it off with that devastating KO, I mean, everyone was worried, and that he was out for a minute. And just goes to show you how tough this is. Took him to the hospital after the fight, got the CAT scan and everything, but the fight itself was a war. It was a pretty much all-out war. Both fighters were connecting. It was a fun fight to watch. Yeah, let me try to see the round. So Berchelt already had some sayings about 130. He's not sure how much longer he can take it at that division. I watched so many fights this weekend. All right. Yeah, it doesn't say the round. I have to type it. 1 sec. All right. But yeah, really good fight. Really exciting fight. Just the first knockout of, Derrick Lewis and Curtis Blaydes, and then to come over here, and yeah, it was in the 10th round. Oh wait, that's another fight. Wow, I can't believe they don't just write it like simply. Yeah, okay. Valdez turned the tide once again in the 9th round with a knockdown. He had that flash knockdown. Berchelt wasn't really hurt her in with that knockdown, but then in the 10th round, that slip encounter was from literally the bottom of the earth, and he knocked the soul out of Berchelt. He will not be the same after that KO. Really, really devastating. But I did very enjoy this fight. It was a good fight. And then after this fight, I landed over onto the other main event that I was really looking forward to, which was my boy AB, about billions, Adrien Broner, in his comeback fight. Man, I love seeing Adrien Broner motivated, man. I like him as an athlete. He's very, very, you know, he's a respectable guy. I really like him. He knows what he's doing. He's a smart man. The antics and all that stuff just gets a lot of attention, but I really respect his grind and really, really excited to see him hungry and dedicated again. Obviously, he took that layoff after that Pacquiao fight, but it's good to see him. Good to see him serious. Good to see him back training. Obviously, you follow him on the gram. He's really training for this fight. Got a win. And yeah, I think I saw this article here. They're talking about Regis Prograis. I think that'll be a good fight for him. Move his way on up. I don't know if he'll fight at 140. That fight changed the last second from 140 to 147. If AB said he can make that 140 weight, I don't know. It would have been tough. I think he could do better in that weight class, but in 147, I don't know how well he'll stack up against these other fighters. Obviously, Adrien Broner has been, touted as a gun shy fighter. Is that how it's called? Gun shy. Slow start. Obviously, in this fight, we saw two slow first rounds, slow middle rounds for AB. Smart boxing, but obviously no output needed to get points. But the second half of the fight is how AB won this fight, and that's how he looks to do in most of his fights. But obviously, he didn't do that against Pacquiao and a lot of other uh, fights that we can remember where he just didn't put in any offense. So I think in this one he did win it in the second half of the fight, and that's how he got the finish. But he boxed very smart. He boxed very calm, cool, and collected. He was the better boxer in my opinion. Um, Obviously, with his experience, wouldn't expect anything else. And yeah, that was the three main events of the past weekend. It was very fun to watch. Very enjoyable fights, and we'll see what comes up. We'll take a look at the UFC really quickly again. For the heavyweights, I'm really excited again just to see what's going to happen with that. I wonder how long it's going to take for the main event. I still don't think the main event between Curtis. Sorry about that, audio issues. We'll have to see about that for um, whenever they make that fight. So hopefully it doesn't take too. I really want to see John in heavyweight and that whole heavyweight division stack up. So next week's fights, we also have another heavyweight main event between Rosenstruck and Gane. Here are my picks for this next week's fights. Start with the featherweights. I got Alex Caceres and Kevin Kuhn. Caceres is a fun fighter. Not really sure about. I've never seen Kuhn before, but um, I'll give it to my boy Caceres, even though he's a little iffy. I got Ashley. We got Ashley Yoder and Angela. I got Angela Hill. I got Pedro Munoz over Jimmy Rivera. Um, I'll pick De La Rosa. I'll pick Ankalaev, and I'll pick um, Rosenstruck for the main event. I think it's going to be a good main event. Um, Gane was really impressive in his last fight, and I just think that Rosenstruck will have the advantage in the stand up a little bit more. I think he'll land more crisp strikes. Use the leg kicks to do some extra damage. Obviously, we have Kaan coming off a win over JDS in December. Man, that was like that fight feels like it was like just a month ago. It's in December, so that's what I was getting at with the whole time thing. But yeah, good main event, good addition, a new puzzle piece that we're going to get solved for the heavyweights next week. Pretty good card, honestly. You have Alexander Hernandez in the prelim main event. You have Axel Oliveira fighting Cowboy, Alexis Davis fighting, and yeah, it's pretty good card again for a fight night. Obviously, the last fight night before UFC 259, which will be a very good card as well. We'll get into that later on as it approaches. Thank you guys again for tuning in to another episode. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions or you want my opinion on some of the fights, feel free to ask them below, man. I'll include it into the podcast. But yeah, we'll see you all next week. Take care and stay safe. Peace.